Hi, this is Rio Longacre here with my co-host Brett House for Signal and Noise podcast, and this is the CES 2026 kind of the grand finale. Actually, we have one more scheduled with a special guest, but
it's been a long run here for 3 days, which feels like a week and a half.
4 days for some of us.
4 days.
It's been a long but fun 4 days, and we've done a few of these. This is our official recap. Might have another session we're going to push out later, but yeah, Brett, wanted to get together here in the suite to talk a little bit about, really just get your thoughts on CES, what you observed, what are some of the really good meaty conversations you had.
Yeah, I think it would be we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the obsession with AI and agentic AI, and actually how do you actually implement agentic AI at the team and organization level to make it effective for actionable use cases. There's been a whole talk about it. It didn't really come to full fruition in 2025. But I was doing a lot of deep dives into, well, how do you ensure that agents that you're building for specific jobs to be done, for specific use cases, are actually being trained and powered by the right types of data, right, to execute almost teams in a box type approaches, right, where you're giving, whether it's a creative team or a media team or a strategy team, the ability to just compound their own team's ability to get work done, right? With
I think the agents are getting better now, right?
Yeah.
They're actually getting better at doing whatever they're set out to do. Even if what they're doing is very specific, people are becoming more comfortable with that, would you say?
Yeah, totally. I think that conversation with Drew at StealthX, which is going to be a podcast coming that we're going to be publishing shortly, kind of really shed some light on that, where he talked about, there are certain people that are power users of agentic workflows and even getting into coding, right? Most people in the ecosystem, right, at the team level are more dabblers, where they're doing kind of basic prompt engineering. But I think there's an ability for all of us, right, especially the more senior people that have sort of a lay of the land, to be not just 10x what we normally do, but 20, 30, 40x, right?
You said 100x.
Yeah, 100x, right? Which is the whole Sam Altman claim that there is going to be a day in the near future, I think he said by 2030, where a single person is driving $1 billion business.
Well, remember,
right?
Drew said in a conversation, that'll drop soon. He said that, as a design leader now, he has agents taking notes for him, agents like summarizing, bubbling up key topics, creating follow-up emails for him. He has agents actually writing code for him, agents doing front end, like designing comps for him. It's wild.
Yeah,
right?
and that's when you start to get into some of those advanced use cases where it's like you're taking what used to take a team of 5, 6, 7, 10 people. A single individual can do that in 1/10 the time. And that's the type of stuff where you start to see not only the compounding effect of its efficiency and speed to market, right? The ability to iterate. If you're like a creative agency and you've got an RFP and you're putting something in front of a client and you've got to turn something around in 24 hours, that is a complete strategy. How do you actually get to the right decision quickly, effectively, so that you've got a greater chance of winning the business?
It's interesting you bring up the content thing, because that was one that came up a lot. Was it's not, content supply chain is not a new topic, right?
Yeah.
But I think what is new about it is the interest. It's coming up almost every conversation now with clients. These are clients who, they've tried personalization. It's been hard for them.
Yeah.
They probably struggle with having a variance of creative to even test. It's just, we've talked about personalization, hyper personalization, one-to-one marketing for 25 years.
Yep.
Content creative is always like the log jam, right? So I think that Gen AI offers the promise to have creative built quicker, less expensively, more variance, right? So I'm seeing a lot of interest now. And okay, can we now look at, now that AI is getting really good at building like high quality video content, high quality, any type of content that we're comfortable with, how can we put that into the workflows for reviews, approvals, regulatory compliance, all that stuff?
Yeah.
How can we do that? There's a lot of interest in that.
I had a bunch of conversations this morning, and there's this sort of like speed to market. How quickly can you ideate and iterate, just even at the ideation level, before you actually get an approval to run forward with your campaign build? And the term that I was hearing this morning a lot, just having conversations with this company, Carl, and a few others, was GTM compression, right? The notion that whether you're an agency or you're a brand, you're like, we can come up with 5, 6, 7, 100 iterations of a program that are fed by a whole bunch of different types of data, right? It could be fed by competitive analysis, market analysis, CRM data, right? You can start to flow all of this unstructured data into these learning models to help it basically better iterate and better decide. Like if I'm going to do a local hyper local marketing campaign across 50 DMAs, right? And I want to create all of these variations. What are the actual steps I need to take? Because you start to get this multiplicity effect where it's like there's so many variations and so many nuances with all of these.
It was always like, is it worth the squeeze back in the day, right?
Yeah, and so oftentimes advertisers would have kind of core. It was kind of a sledgehammer approach, but I think the chisel approach is becoming much more a reality without AI slop necessarily. Like it's not just throwing a bunch of AI crap that's just variations of creative. If you've got the right type of training models in place, and I was talking to this company, Carl, and that's what they do. They basically feed all this in, and they're giving you a complete. It's not a workflow tool. It's more of a strategic planning tool to say, this is your competitive reality. These are the micro market realities. This could be B2B or B2C. These are all of the creative components that you need to go to market across all of these dimensions, right? And it could be in the hundreds, the thousands, right? And then being able to actually plug right into the tools to build all this stuff is something that's it's kind of the back to the Zuckerberg comment of like how you automate ideation all the way through delivery and attribution, right? And speed that process up. But if you can start with speeding, how do we get the decision when there's so much on the line to get this shit right fast
and then push it through those processes, right? And this is like LeapPoint actually, who's like they're an Omnicom agency and like great at experts at Workfront. And they've done a lot of implementations, and Workfront's a great tool. I've used it for years, right? But I think to really take it to the next level, applying AI to that, speeding things up, making these processes go quicker, and then I think having to tie into paid media, like kind of like taking DCO, which always kind of used to sit in an island and was attached to ad server, I think really looking at that fresh and say, okay, can we do it better now? Can we and get the results back quicker? So I think it's
get the optionality back quicker, right? Like I've got optionality on my segmentation schema, on my taxonomy, on my creative variation, on my target micro segments, whatever it is. That getting that optionality up front fast, immediately, like 24-hour, 12-hour, 10-hour turnarounds, which used to take teams hundreds of hours, dozens of hours, and a lot of FTE, sort of human capital,
it would take
to
weeks,
build
if
this
not
stuff.
months, to push that stuff through. It was wild. Another thing you called it earlier when we were talking, Brett, was you talked about deterministic versus probabilistic. I thought that was a really interesting observation. And I guess just to summarize, and I'd love to hear
a blast from the past, right?
Yeah.
It's just
but like remember there's that obsession, with third-party cookies going away, signal loss. We talked about it for years. I was on a million panels talking about it, but like this obsession with first-party data, deterministic data, which is super important, right? But like with AI, it almost feels like we're like back to we're looking at probabilistic now because the models are getting better, AI is getting better. We can create synthetic data now. I thought that was a good observation you made. Love for you to talk about that.
Like there was an obsession, and I came from the identity space with Newstar and TransUnion, and I saw some of their talks even at this show, right? And there was this obsession with sort of the fidelity of the data being input. The idea that the data that goes in is going to reflect the output that comes out of like some sort of decisioning engine, some sort of AI-powered decisioning engine. And so there's this a lot of talk about identity, about first party data that's been talked about for 15 years, but the idea that you have this high fidelity, sort of super granular consumer level data that's cleansed and hygiened, right? So that your outputs are going to be clean. And what we're realizing now, and I think you started to see that with Meta, right? With when they captured all that mobile data. Right, and they realized then ATT.
Suddenly they weren't allowed to expose it at all, right?
Remember that? And they proved years ago, and I think it's taken the industry a little bit to catch up. Is that you don't really need you can actually build a lot of your profiles, your consumer profiles, on synthetic sort of mechanisms, synthetic data mechanisms, and because AI does so well with unstructured data that you just give it signal, and it could be dirty signal, and it doesn't matter. It's just the more that you're putting into it, the ability for this AI to rapidly process the compute power to just filter through and to do all of that sort of signal recognition, to be able to say 99% likelihood that it's this person with this device, this household, all that sort of stuff doesn't require that you necessarily have you might have 16 email addresses and 2 household addresses, and a bunch of different device data that you can't. It's hard to resolve in the traditional identity resolution models. But
not with AI, right?
Yeah, not with AI,
Yeah.
right? And so it sort of takes, like, TransUnion was out there talking a lot about identity, and we were talking about, isn't that a bit passe at this point, when you can just deal with huge volumes of unstructured data and allow these AI capabilities to sort of predict to high degrees of confidence what you need to do, like what is that targeting schema? Are we actually hitting the right person, right? And without necessarily having the high fidelity data underneath, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess one other thing I noticed too, that like there's so many interesting AI startups. Now that sounds a little trite. There's been so much talk about that, but I mean, remember last year, like during Ad Week, we talked about like this was like the time of the creator, right? There was a big space for creator at Ad Week, and I thought that was just super fun, right? And then one thing I noticed at this time, there were so many like amazing like people that I've known forever who are taking advantage of what's going on in AI and what's going on in technology, how quickly things are moving to launch interesting startups, right? It's like really a fun space. Not great, not all startups work. That's the name of the game, right? But I think it's really cool to watch. I think many of them will.
Yeah.
Right? Many of them have great products. They already have revenue. People are trying it out. It's an interesting time. It's an exciting time.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see how quickly these can go from sort of prototype. It's like sort of anybody with a Lovable account and some some basic Claude experience or ChatGPT coding experience can come up with a prototype. But how quickly do you take a prototype into to actual MVP release and usage that's effective on the client side? So I think there's going to be a period where we see a lot of these startups that are sort of a bit smoke and mirrors because their prototypes aren't ready for prime time, right?
But things are moving fast. Like I ran into the guy Jonathan Maffei from Streamer, right? 18 months from conception to exit.
Yeah.
Sold to Magnite.
Oh yeah, I met him at Ad Week, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy how fast they moved. That's a great success story. Or Joe Lux, who we interviewed earlier this week.
Yeah, datalinks.ai.
Within a year or something, he put a team together, has a great product out there, had a big announcement.
I mean, I talked to him a year ago, and he didn't have a chief product officer. He didn't have this and this.
He didn't even know what he was going to build completely. He just had kind of a general sense. Now he's got a product out there. He's got investment. I mean, he had some announcement this week about investment. It's super cool. So I think it's exciting how fast things are moving. So we're going to see more of that. We ran into a bunch of people I think we've known for a long time doing similar things.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there'll be a certain consolidation of people that, there's some of these solutions that people create as prototypes aren't going to survive, right? As sort of the proof needs to be in the pudding, and clients are starting to test these things and get them out of sort of like the inevitable prototyping and sort of beta release stage. But it gives people like the Joe Lux and people like that in the industry that have a huge amount of knowledge, have developed some data partnerships in a lot of cases, the ability to bring stuff that's fully usable and almost fully architected to market in just exponentially faster than anything we've seen, I think, in our careers, right? So there's a tidal wave of startups that are going to grow rapidly and get investment and build teams.
Totally. I also think the time is good because I don't know if Joe could have built what he did a couple of years ago, because we hadn't learned how does the data really need to be structured and labeled, the whole concept of an ontology, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't the understanding of that has gotten much better.
Yeah.
What is a world model? So I think the learnings of 2 years, they're now being applied. Stuff's moving faster. It's more useful. It's working better.
Yeah,
it's an exciting time. Anything else you noticed?
Well, and I think to that point, it's like I just a lot of talk about the sort of criticality of like the companies that are going to really survive are the ones that have the golden goose are going to survive. The core competency here to me is the semantic layer. It's how do you build a semantic layer that trains the data that you're pulling together, whether it's end-to-end consumer data, from sort of identity all the way through engagement, through attribution and customer experience. How do you actually pull that all together and tell the agents, what's good, what's not good? So you're sort of giving them their instruction booklet so that their outputs are what you're sort of promising to the client, right? Because otherwise you are going to get that there's that fear of like a messy output because of messy inputs. But those that master that semantic layer, that's where, because everybody can get access to the data. Everybody can do partnerships and sort of set up your data infrastructure, whether it's cloud-based or otherwise. But it's like, how do you actually, the decisioning layer that tells the agents what to do and how to do it effectively is where I think the golden goose is going to be. And I think that's where you're going to start to see a separation of like the haves and the have-nots, is those that have really figured that out, right? Because again, how do you deal with massive amounts of unstructured data in ways that actually have value outputs for the end client, for the buyers, right? I think it's critical.
Anything else you want to call out from the show so far?
Yeah, I was kind of looking at my notes. Yeah, I think we talked about is sort of like GTM compression. I think is a play. I think creative agencies have struggled with like a linear selling model for the last, ever since they separated from sort of the media agency world, right? Media agencies figured out that if they start to get a data advantage and they collect data for the programs and campaigns and launches that they're supporting for their clients, that gives them leverage, right? Just like the walled gardens have figured out, right? If the more data you've got, consumer data, the more you can like accurately predict performance, right? And then you can demand more money from your brand clients.
You look at like what we've done, right? I mean, the whole acquisition of IPG,
Yeah.
the crown jewel being Axiom, for that incredible data set they have, right? Combining that with Omni becoming Omni Plus. I mean, I think that there's a big play there. And you saw the announcement today about our competitor,
Yeah.
the deal they're making with LiveRamp, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think you're seeing a lot of
The competitor that we won't go, that will go unsaid.
But I think you're seeing, like, it's a good point. Like, okay, media and creative were broken apart
Yeah.
about 15 years ago. So I think you're seeing the new HoldCo model is going to look very different, where
Yeah.
everything's kind of collapsing back together, where you have that flywheel between media, measurement, creative,
Yeah,
data, tech, all
And,
together.
well, and how can these creative agencies, either independent or part of the holdcos, how can they compound their value without just project-based work, where they're going and they're winning a project, they win the McDonald's deal, they roll out a big program and campaign, and then it's on to the next pitch, right? How do they actually gain IP that compounds over time, just like the media agencies have done with all this exhaust that they're getting from all the campaigns they're running? They can go back to the clients and say, this demands more investment here, here, and here, and so suddenly they're expanding the pie because they've got that data advantage. I think there's a future where creative agencies start to get an IP data. It's not necessarily performance data, but I think it's sort of brand IP, it's competitive IP.
Well, they need to have their own IP to win and to retain business.
Yeah.
Now. I mean,
It can't be just make it pretty, design it, come up with the great idea that's going to engage consumers, and then move on to the next client. Like, I think they need to capture something they can build over time.
Stagwell has their platform they're launching. Horizon Media has done some interesting things, building on top of Blue, which is their audience platform, and so they had a product now who's quite good. So I think you're seeing a lot of interesting moves in this space.
Yep.
Related to that, and we'll continue to see more.
Yep, for sure.
But this was a good show. I really enjoyed it. It was good to see everybody.
Yeah, and there's definitely, people were amped. There was definitely like, and I probably was more amped than the average person, because it was technically my first CES. I've been to so many industry shows, but this is the first time I was on the ground. And I did feel like a palpable sense of excitement, and people realized that, and I think Jeff Green referenced it when he was being interviewed by Terry Kawaja. He talked about the open web, and how there's actually like an opportunity for significant growth and evolution that's going to be advantageous to the entire advertising ecosystem. I'm seeing that type of it's sort of the abundance versus scarcity approach, right? Like there is a huge amount of optimism about how all of this thinking, all this stuff that we're sort of throwing at the wall for hoping something will stick, is going to result in some very interesting outcomes, both for brands, for advertisers, for data tech, right? That are going to almost force evolution. Stuff that we've been promising for like 20 years. And now you're starting to see this stuff really, the cycles of development are so much faster that you're starting to see this stuff like, wow, we've been talking about this for 20 years, and suddenly you're seeing it happen.
Good point. You know what's interesting too? Like I noticed this, like agencies, you'd expect this is CES is one of the 10-pole events. All the big agencies were here, bigger, more so than ever even. All the partners were here. I mean, like AWS is here, like lots of people, Amazon Ads was here. So the hyperscalers and the tech companies were here. The brands were here. I mean, this is I mean, everyone was getting together. It was cool to see, and
and it's been like that with CES in the past. And do you think it's a little bit more like Cannes Lions, more like
it's a can in a desert now, right? That's really what it's become. I mean, it used to be more just gadgets. It's become more of an advertising tentpole. Now it is, firmly established that it's one of them now, and it's a huge event. It's about 150,000 people total. And they consolidated between the Cosmo and the Aria. They really consolidated marketing and advertising folks in one place. I wasn't running to the Venetian and stuff like that. So it was.
You're still running between those two, which is a bit of a task.
I think it was 20-something thousand steps per day. But but overall wasn't, I think if you add the Venetian, you're in 30,000. So,
And are we only seeing a microcosm of the larger CES? Because I saw less of the electronics and sort of the hardware component, much more of the software, data tech, martech, ad tech, AI play.
Well, if you go up to the convention center, right? I was up there this morning for meeting up with Amazon Ads, and it was. And that's a big place. There's all the gadgets. It was cool. I walked around, and it was, it was interesting too.
And that Amazon Ads pavilion, that is gorgeous. That suite is amazing.
It was interesting too. Was the countries, like I walked in there. There's Korea had their contingent there. Just the brand Korea being a leader in tech. It was cool to see, and they did a really good job. Apparently, Japan did a good job. I heard some countries maybe did less of a good job, were a little less well organized. But it was cool to see that, and the tech was great. But I mean, that's kind of. When I think of CES, I always think of the tech side, but now this is the advertising marketing side that was. I thought they did a good job consolidating. It was fun.
Yeah, no, for sure. So it was a great 2026 CES. It's not quite over for us. We've got a couple more things going on, but it's been fun and exhausting, and dozens and dozens of meetings and dinners, but I'm getting a real palpable sense of sort of like almost like economic momentum. Tech innovation momentum. And I think CES is all about that, but I see that 2026 is going to be this year where a lot of exciting stuff starts to come to fruition, and it's like all the promises start to deliver.
There's been a couple, I think, slow years, or ad spend hasn't grown a lot. There's been a lot of concerns about the economy. We're going into this year. There's some tax cuts. There's some maybe favorable things. Some of the chaos is maybe subsiding a little bit. So I think there's a general sense of, people are starting to feel, I don't know if optimistic is the right, but a little more positive.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone. This was great. Looking forward to more of these. We have a bunch of great podcast episodes that are going to drop over the next few weeks. I think we have 4 or 5 banked already, Brett. Right? So let's look out for those, and then we'll continue this through IAB, Possible, all the big events. Will be there representing and creating some great content. So thanks again, and
thanks everybody.
Over and out.